Thank you so much, Tarak sir, for introducing me. So basically, our speakers have shared a very rich experience that they carry with them. I would like to keep my communication more throughout the session in English. First of all, I hope the audience is having a really insightful time, listening to us, because I am thoroughly enjoying the fruitful discussion. We have had grassroots level experience people with us. Thanks to ISRA for obliging me with this opportunity. Now, firstly, I would like to set up a very brief context of the flow of my session. So to start with, I would want to touch upon the need of development, sustainability, and corporate social responsibility in today's scenario, and how the meaning has evolved and changed over time, over the years, and looking at the current scenario, how are we actually adopting to the COVID times in terms of involvement with the grassroots and deeper engagement with the community. So earlier, sustainability definition was much more confined and limited to, going going for the current needs, addressing the current needs, and saving for the future generations. But over the time period, this definition has evolved, and there are so many lot of perspectives to sustainability and CSR. Now organizations and NGOs and bigger corporations, they are not doing charity or donation work anymore. The focus has shifted eventually towards, like our speakers also said, deeper grassroots engagements and overall rural upliftment. So every investment that a big business corporation does has to factor in the environmental, social, and corporate governance to assess its performance and assess the societal impact. So I would like to speak upon one concept that is the shared value creation, which means that, connection between the business success and the social progress is becoming increasingly clear. And every region or every geography has their own sets of challenges, whether it's poverty alleviation, whether it's related to livelihood, whether it's related to healthcare and nutrition. So the corporate profits would eventually rise with greater brand equity if both the corporations as well as the NGOs work together and foster a multi-stakeholder approach. And by creating shared value vis-a-vis, pursuing financial success in a way that yields societal benefits. So even the bigger business corporations who earlier followed a very hard-nosed approach have embarked on this significant journey of shared value initiatives. So, for example, say Tata. Tata has a very strong code of conduct when it comes to community initiatives. You look at TRIF, or you look at the various initiatives, Tata Voltas that they have been doing over the years is mostly focused on bridging the urban and rural divide. I feel organizations need to establish ecosystems and hold a multi-stakeholder approach instead of working in silos and isolation to catalyze that change. Just to quote here one sentence, Michael Porter and Mark Kramer have also argued in the past that companies can move beyond CSR and gain kind of a competitive advantage by including social and environmental considerations into their hardcore strategies. So having said that, treating social challenges as business opportunities is again one of the most powerful path to social progress. Even the UN Global Compact principles have this collaboration embedded in their universal principles around human rights, having that sort of an integrity to work towards the communities. So like earlier we used to say that, we should have an approach of one size fits all. So that approach no longer works, because everything has to be customized. The needs are customized. So for example, if you are working with a scheduled caste community, then you'll have to understand their traditional culture first before imparting some sort of a program. So I feel need assessment is one very important tool to understand the community needs. Coming from the experience from where I come from, I have worked with the tiger reserve communities, wherein the forest dwellers have moved out of the forest and they were facing a lot of issues. So in that case, financial assistance not work. So it is very important that we understand this landscape shift over the years, and understand the risk mapping tools. NGOs should be more accountable, transparent, and there has to be an appropriate allocation of funding on the various programs, and the reporting that they do should be in accordance with the universal accepted standards. For example, the organization which I work for currently, KPMG, they have set GRI standards for sustainability reporting. There is this integrated reporting framework basis which they assess whether the business corporation is in accordance with the set criteria. Then I would like to touch upon the point that why NGOs are actually required. If we go back to 1970s and 1980s, we would have seen Narmada Bachao Andolan in 1985, wherein, Medha Patkar came out strongly as an environmental activist. Similarly, Chipko movement. So these sort of awareness, these sort of programs and movements actually created that awareness among the communities that you need to take that kind of an ownership. Having said that, I would like to quote here that, if civil society is an iceberg, then NGOs are the peaks above the waterline. And the rest bulk of the community groups, or say political parties and social groups, they are below the waterline. They are not like very passive, I would say, but definitely they are below the line. Again, capacity is one very important aspect that needs to be taken care of. So while development of any particular community, or development of, say, a manufacturing plant in a particular area, the government or the corporation needs to take care of the community as well. So a business corporation and the community development go hand in hand, and they cannot work in silos. Coming on to the today's scenario of COVID adaptation. I mean, no one would have thought that a global pandemic like this would affect humanity at such a large scale, and it would reach out across boundaries, and everyone, eventually the world would have to kind of shut down entirely. So the most impacted population here is the vulnerable labor groups and the daily wage workers in particular, that are devastated badly. And eventually this has led to people falling in despair, because majority of our population, Indian population, they rely on agriculture and labor. So that has been being impacted a lot. Now, in current scenario, digitization is being fast tracked, and COVID has sort of expedited the digital transformation. Similarly, in my organization, KPMG has set up the digital data rooms and collaborative workbenches to ensure that we deliver high touch services, even working from home. Even the logistic companies are ensuring that their supply chain ecosystem is paperless. So the productivity of employees is no longer measured the same anymore. Now, coming on to the way NGOs have responded to it, I think NGOs have made a lot of unprecedented efforts in frontline, and they have actually worked 24/7 for the betterment of our communities, which is incredible, considering the current scenario wherein a person is scared to move out of your home. So lots of efforts have been made when it comes to the migrant workers in form of, say, relief efforts. The big corporations are giving money to set up swab collection centers to fill up the kind of funding gap, or as the organization's liquidity has dried up. So companies were actually not prepared to address such needs. Even NGOs weren't prepared. So I feel that there has to be now, as a part of the policy, there has to be an anticipatory financing mechanism to, make finance raised in advance to address such kind of immediate needs at a very large scale. There were a lot of community groups, women groups, who actually started leaving all the livelihood activities that they were doing before, and instead they started focusing on making of masks, making of sanitizers. So that was something which, again, of significant importance, that our labor should be that much skilled to kind of be flexible and innovate with the coming times. Similarly, I feel that there has to be an outcome funding platform. There has to be an investment vehicle which provides liquidity to the NGOs at such dire times. And developing such risk framework mechanism would definitely help NGOs for creating that kind of an environment for our communities. So this is how we can actually tackle such global challenges at large. So to conclude with, I would like to say that there are many big foundations, many NGOs who are doing great work, and I sincerely give a lot of accolade to them. I really appreciate them that they are making so many efforts towards the rural upliftment even in this time. So I feel there has to be a proper mechanism developed, a proper policy developed to respond to such calamity. So thank you so much. Thanks. I think this was the allocated time to me. Thanks a lot for giving me this opportunity. And also, at last, I would like to appreciate all the NGOs and all the stakeholders who are working so hard for our betterment of our nation.